Alright, this is my first time using YouTube Capture, so that's interesting. So, this is my cat, Paul. 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 Okay, never mind. Paul is a jerk. I want to discuss are virtues no more than dispositions to obey moral rules. It's by Walter Schaller, and pretty much what this is about, it's saying that do archaic judgments presuppose prior deontic judgments. When we say deontic judgments, we're talking about those about rightness, considering moral rules. And when we say archaic judgments, I would refer to describe that as judgments about virtue. So pretty much we're talking about what he does here. He does this idea of the standard view, which is the standard view of morality, and what is discussed here is these three statements, which are stating that pretty much they are statements of how virtues are only dispositions to obey moral rules. But what Schaller is doing here is he is arguing against this. So he gives, and then following this discussion of the standard view, he discusses duties of beneficence versus duties of gratitude, and virtues of beneficence, or the virtue of benevolence, and the virtue of gratitude. And now he also does discuss the virtue of self-respect, but I'm gonna skip that because the virtue of gratitude is very similar to what I'm trying to discuss here. Number one of the standard view: moral rules require persons to perform or omit certain actions, and these actions can be performed by persons who lack no less than by those who possess various virtues. On this analysis, the rule against lying, for example, can be obeyed perfectly well, even by those who lack the virtue of honesty or of veracity. One's motives in obeying a rule are irrelevant to whether one has fulfilled its requirements. So honesty is one of those virtues or rules which can be shown to where it can be shown that the virtue of honesty or veracity presupposes a disposition to obey a moral rule of not lying. So that's the first one. This first one is pretty much saying that a person being required to obey more rules is able to be performed, and pretty much the same as those who possess various virtues. Pretty much saying that we have these virtues, and some can that people can obey the moral virtues without necessarily possessing the virtue of honesty. Number two, moral virtues are fundamentally and essentially dispositions to obey moral rules. Thus, the heart of the virtue of honesty is a disposition to obey the moral rule, which forbids telling lies, and at the core of the virtue of honesty is a disposition to obey the moral rule, which forbids telling lies. And the core of the virtue of benevolence is the disposition to perform those actions that fulfill the duty of beneficence. So pretty much this second one is saying that when we have a virtue of, say, honesty benevolence, then this is pretty much reducible to having or obeying the moral rule of being beneficent. So, and then the third one, the moral virtues have only instrumental or derivative value. Individuals who possess the virtues are more likely to do what is right than are people who lack such dispositions. Certain dispositions or character traits are virtues. Therefore, just because they motivate right conduct, and others are vices because they motivate wrong actions. So, saying that moral virtues have instrumental value, it really means that having the virtue of honesty, saying that having the virtue is a means towards the end of not telling lies, and that it's having the virtue is only a means to the end of obeying moral rules, and then also saying that there's no intrinsic value in virtues. So I'm going to move on to the duty of beneficence. Schaller does here what he does here is he discusses it and lays it out, and it pretty much explains why this duty, as well as the corresponding virtue of benevolence, does not correspond to what the standard view says in all three of the statements. What I shall argue in this section is that the duty of beneficence cannot be satisfactorily formulated in accordance with the first thesis of the standard view, that moral rules command only certain act types. The claim that beneficence is a duty and not merely supererogatory should elicit little dissent. We ought to help people in need. But when we try to formulate this duty as a moral rule for conduct, well-known difficulties suffice. Some formulations help everyone who needs help are clearly too strong and too demanding. Others are more plausible, but otherwise flawed. The rule "help people as much as possible" raises the question: how much is possible? Is it possible to give all of one's money to the poor and homeless? But doing so will surely go beyond the requirements of this duty. Other formulations of the duty in terms of obligatory actions are inadequate because they allow persons too much latitude or discretion. The rule one ought to help other people sometimes to some extent is flawed for just this reason. It fails to capture the fact that on some occasions the refusal to help another is wrong. And even if it is true that people who fulfill the duty of beneficence have acted beneficially, sometimes to some extent, that way of stating the duty is inadequate as a general moral rule, as a normative guide to conduct. There's dogs and cats around me, sorry. Notice furthermore that if the duty of beneficence cannot be stated successfully as a rule for action, then the virtue of benevolence cannot be defined in accordance with the second thesis of the standard view, namely as a disposition to obey such a rule. Given the problems that confront the attempt to conceive the duty of beneficence in accordance with the standard view, let us consider a different approach. Instead of defining the virtue in terms of the duty and trying to formulate the duty as an action guiding rule sufficiently fine-grained to tell us when, how much, how often, toward whom we ought to act beneficently, suppose the duty is conceived as requiring persons to cultivate, to seek to acquire the virtue of benevolence, to become benevolent persons. In other words. From the first, the objections requiring persons to act beneficently as much as possible do not extend to the obligation to develop the virtue of benevolence as much as possible. What the latter duty requires is that people become ever more willing to help those who are in need, to become less and less indifferent to human suffering. Second, consider the case of the infant drowning in a shallow pool who could easily be rescued. Someone who had a policy of acting beneficially, sometimes to some extent, could callously walk past this child without violating. What the heck was that? Without violating that policy, but letting that child drown is clearly inconsistent with possessing the virtue of benevolence. Third, the duty of beneficence is explicated in terms of the actions of some which are optional, than an individual's refusal to perform a particular helping act, which is not obligatory, provides no reason by itself for concluding that the person is not fulfilling the duty satisfactorily. Furthermore, fourth, for the person who has cultivated the virtue of benevolence, the question whether she ought to help a needy individual on a given occasion will often be subordinated to, or even displaced by, the question of whether this person is whom she is able to help. Non-benevolent persons will tend to ask whether they have to perform a given beneficent action, and may often seek reasons or excuses not to. But the more one possesses the virtue of benevolence, the less will the fact that a particular action is not, strictly speaking, obligatory count as a reason not to perform it. The benevolent person will want to help people in need and will look for ways to overcome whatever obstacles might stand in the way of providing the needed aid or assistance. In these cases, the needy individual will not be benefited except by the action of someone who is sympathetic or benevolent and who feels compassion. Possessing the virtue is thus not good or necessary simply as a motive for an independently specified act of beneficence. On the contrary, the beneficent action itself is not possible except for the one who is motivated by benevolence, sympathy, or some other altruistic emotion. So, what is being discussed here about the duty of beneficence, or the virtue of benevolence, is that... Holy shit, that's a bee. Oh my god, that was bee. Sorry. Goddamn, doing videos outside. Really. Anyway. God. What's being discussed here is this idea that the duty of beneficence and the corresponding virtue do not correspond and do not fit with this standard view. Now let's look at the first one. Moral rules require persons to perform or omit certain actions, and these actions can be performed by persons who lack no less than by those who possess the various virtues. Now this comes down to the duty of beneficence, and as to... Get away from me. God damn. As to how much to which people, because he was discussing the statement of some people to some extent. That would mean that someone walking by a child drowning who could be easily rescued is following the duty of beneficence, but does not possess the virtue of benevolence, not at all. So, and then we have these questions as to with the duty, how much, how often, to which people. God damn. Fucking Jesus. As you know, as to also how much we're able. And I think that what he shows here very well is that there's a different... some kind of asymmetry, I guess. It's not the moral duty of beneficence is not symmetrical to the virtue of benevolence. Having the virtue of benevolence is really having compassion for people. It's not only having compassion, feeling sympathy, and wanting to help others to the point that they will try to overcome obstacles that prevents them from helping as much people as possible. But the second one, moral virtues. So, in my opinion, the duty of beneficence and the corresponding virtue shows a little asymmetry between the duty and the virtue, just because of this one duty of beneficence. There's a little asymmetry there. Number two, moral virtues are fundamentally and essentially dispositions to obey moral rules, or to obey moral rules. This is essentially saying that having the virtue of benevolence is merely being disposed to helping people, or being beneficent towards others, being a benefactor. It's saying that that if you have the virtue, then you are disposed to fulfilling the duty of beneficence. Sorry, there's fucking flies everywhere. I should not do videos outside. I mean, I like to, but there's flies everywhere, and there's a bee around here too. Anyway, like I said, because of this asymmetry between the two of within beneficence, because there's this, we can see that someone having the virtue of benevolence is, having certain feelings that will, make you do more things, and that shows that it's way different than fulfilling this rule. And saying that moral rules are dispositions, or that moral virtues are merely having a virtue is being disposed to fulfilling certain rules. I certainly think that if you have a virtue, then you are going to fulfill that rule. However, it's not merely a disposition to obey a rule. It's more a disposition to be within the duty of beneficence and the virtue of benevolence. Having the virtue is the disposition to be a benefactor to as many people as you can, because you want to be. So there's a big asymmetry here. So what's being tried to do in this standard view is to show that is not only to show that there are very similar virtues and rules, and that one is reducible to the other, and basically that rules are prior to virtues. The third one, the moral virtues have only instrumental value. Individuals who possess the virtues are more likely to do what is right. Or it's basically saying that virtues are a means to the end of rules, and that's the only real value they have. I think that because of this duty of beneficence, Schaller has shown that virtues have more than that. If the virtue of benevolence has these things of compassion, and feelings like that, which will lead you to wanting to do more and wanting to get over obstacles to be a benefactor as much as to as much people as you can and you are able to. That he has shown that there's more than just instrumental value towards rules in these virtues. Now let's go to gratitude. The standard view also fails to describe accurately either the virtue or the duty of gratitude. On that view, it should be possible to formulate a rule for conduct obedience which fully satisfy the duty, and for persons who lack the virtue to satisfy the duty. That's the whole thing here. People who lack the virtue to satisfy the duty of gratitude. Now, for benevolence or beneficence, if you lack the virtue, do you satisfy the duty? That is difficult within the idea of that, because we have issues as to how to carve out the rule that would correspond to beneficence. But with gratitude is something that, because of somebody being a benefactor to you, you are either going to have this feeling or you aren't. You're gonna feel gratitude towards this person, or you are not. It's a feeling, and actions only come out of this feeling. Actions don't come out of feeling, out of not feeling this gratitude. In short, the duty of gratitude cannot be stated satisfactorily as a moral rule for action. On the contrary, in order to fulfill it, one must possess the virtue of gratitude. It follows that what this duty requires, first and foremost, is that persons appreciate the favor that has been done them, and that they do not regard their benefactor as existing solely to provide favors. So gratitude is really, gratitude is really understanding that people aren't just there always for your purpose, and that them being a benefactor to you is not taken for granted, and it's something that you should show gratitude for. So gratitude is different from beneficence in that there is no rule of gratitude that can exist without there being a virtue of gratitude. Gratitude is intrinsic because it's a feeling that comes from that comes from someone being a benefactor to you. So that's pretty much what that is. That's a great. These two virtues show very well that virtues are more than just the rules, and that the standard view fails. Looking at the standard view with respect to virtue, number one, moral rules require persons. What the hell? Oh my gosh. Anyway. Moral rules require persons to perform or omit actions, and these actions can be performed by persons who lack no less than by those who possess various virtues. This fails by the virtue of gratitude. And it fails because of the fact that it is hard to have a duty of gratitude without there being feelings of gratitude because of someone being a benefactor to you. God damn. So this fails pretty much because of that. You can't, have a feeling. You can't perform a duty of gratitude without having the virtue. Moral virtues are dispositions to obey moral rules. The rule of gratitude does not exist without the virtue. Moral virtues only have instrumental value. The virtue is, in this case of gratitude, is what is going to cause the right action. So, ultimately, to sum up, what he argues here, is that this standard view has it backwards, and it's kind of needs to be switched around. This standard view says that rules are prior to virtues, and that virtues only have instrumental value, and that persons can act upon rules, just the same as if they had a virtue. This is what he argues essentially, is that it's wrong in that it has it, it has it backwards. And I think that because of his virtues that he lays out and discusses here, he shows that very well. That this standard view is wrong. Fucking God. But yeah, that's pretty much what it does. So pretty much, moral rules require persons to perform or omit certain actions. These actions can be performed by persons who lack no less than by those who possess various virtues. Virtues entail a hell of a lot more than what rules do. We can lay out tons of rules, that we are supposed to do, but if we have a virtue, a character, a way to act, a way to be, how to live, and ways that we're supposed to act towards others, then we have a lot more packed into that. That if we have a virtue, we're going to act a lot differently. We're going to act in fact a lot better. We're going to be a lot more honest if we have the virtue of honesty. We're going to be more beneficent if we have the virtue of benevolence. We're going to be gracious only if we have the virtue of gratitude. So the rules are very minimal ways of saying how we should be acting. Number 2, moral virtues are dispositions to obey moral rules. The rules do fall under the certain virtues. Rules are fulfilled by certain virtues being had. However, the virtues are prior to the moral rules, just because of the character traits and the practical reason involved, to where a character is developed, and emotions are had, to where a character emotions are had to where a character is developed, and we have a better character than if we just had rules to be obeyed. Third, Jesus, fucking flies, goddamn. Moral virtues have only instrumental value. Individuals who possess virtues are more likely to do what is right. Um, moral virtues have intrinsic value. Um, they are prior to virtues, and they have intrinsic value. To where if you have a virtue, you're going to have a lot better character than if you were to simply obey certain rules. Obeying certain rules doesn't give you a character. So that's my discussion on that. Let me know what you think on this if you're watching this. What you think? What do you think is prior to which? Do you think that archaic the archaic judgments are prior to deontic ones, or which one's prior? Virtues or rules? So yeah, I'm curious. I'm curious on what you think on this.